Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CLSR. And I'm your host, the counselor. Today, we are going to be talking about suicide. And suicide is something that we have to talk about. There's too many people not talking about it, too many people looking away, afraid to talk about it. And it makes sense. I think people have this impression that sometimes when you talk things up, next thing you know, it's a fear, right? Or some people just don't want to talk about it. It's not something that they're comfortable with. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to learn to be a little bit comfortable with the uncomfortable because, especially during this pandemic, there are people who are going to be feeling like they're coming to pieces. And I'll be honest, I'll tell you straight up, there's a lot of resources out there that have shut down, support services for all kinds of people from university work, youth programs. They're all shut down, and we're not even thinking about the mental health. So, this podcast is for everyone, young, old, black, white, purple, enabled, disabled, gender, everyone. Everyone that's out there, we need to have a little discussion on suicide because there are people who are feeling suicidal. And being afraid to talk about it is understandable. However, these are courageous conversations that we need to have. We need to understand that times are changing and people are in predicaments and resources are limited. And shying away and ignoring or pretending, no, there are consequences for their actions. And what I mean by that is pandemic, shutting everyone down, locking them down, um, chaos, insecurity, vulnerability, frustration, anger. There's a host of emotions that are happening and they're building and they're growing. And see what we do. See, it one makes you wonder how educated we really are. Because, like, it's funny because I was listening to the news today and talking about, oh, we're pushing students back to school. Obviously, they want to push them back for economic reasons, not for sensible reasons. However, I'm just trying to say that we're reacting. We're not really thinking about what's going on, and we have to think about it. So, our situation that we're coming out of, some people are still in it heavily, the pandemic, but it's not just that subject, but just the environment that we're in. All these emotions, feelings are built up inside many people, and they have to come out. They've been suppressing all these things, and it's time for us to take a look at them. Now, if you're feeling suicidal, you got to remember the pain. It may seem like it's out of control, overwhelming, and permanent for now. That's the state you're in. But there are ways to deal with suicidal thoughts and feelings to overcome this. This pain that nags at you is something that we can do something about. And we also have to realize that people, no matter how much pain they could be going through, especially at this moment, right? They have to understand they're not alone. There are a number of people who have these thoughts in their lives at different times, right? It's not a defect. It's not something that's wrong with you. It doesn't mean that you're loco or you're weak, or you're less than. It doesn't mean that you have pains that other people don't have. No, this is just a pain that you could be going through at this moment. It could be justified in many cases where it's just like you're going through something so traumatic it's driving you nuts and you're having a hard time dealing. So certain things aren't making sense. But what is a little bit encouraging is that if you can get your mind wrapped around the time, right? Understanding that in time with support, your situation can definitely improve, right? You can overcome these problems. And yes, suicidal feelings and thoughts, they can pass. Different things for different people, but just knowing that these feelings that you're going through at this particular time. They have to be acknowledged, but you have to try your best to understand that, you know what, this isn't permanent. I might just have these thoughts. I'm going to work through it. I'm going to get some support, what have you. And it's normal that people go through thoughts, right? Every once in a while, right? Like, I'm telling you right now, it doesn't matter who it is out there. We all like to think we're in a unique position. However, we're not. There are people, the most famous people, and it doesn't matter if you name names, famous or not famous. People go through it, right? The most talented people, have thought about it. And and I both know, even when you pay attention to the media, nobody's invincible to this thing, right? Even, there's stars out there you've seen that have, you know, unfortunately have committed suicide. And there was a lot of mental health issues um, associated with it. And it's something that happens in society. It's so sad. But all I'm saying is that it happens at all levels for various different reasons. And is there a cure? No, but there's a way to cope. In most situations, there are definitely ways to cope, right? This is a pain, it's a form of depression, and it can be treated, right? And you got to have some hope, especially in these times. They're drastic times, and the situation could seem hopeless, right? And you just have to try to remind yourself that life is worth living, and this takes some risk taking and some real courage, right? To bring yourself back from where you could be fallen into or drawn into this suicidal thought in this state that you could be going in. It takes some real courage, right, to face life. Coping skills are definitely essential for overcoming things like depression, frustration, and uh, a host of emotions. But trying to find strength is what's important. And there are things that we need to keep in mind, right? And just make sure that a these emotions that you are going through, they are constantly changing and revolving in your mind, right? How you feel now may be a little different on how you felt the day before, and how you might feel in a week from now or in a month from now. So these emotions are not fixed, they're going to change. Okay. And see, even when people are listening to this and they might be in that state, they might go, well, it hasn't changed yet. Well, if you change your mindset to that there is a possibility for change and start actually making some change, maybe things will in time definitely change. I didn't say it's not going to take work, but just understanding that change will come eventually. And some might feel, oh, I've been waiting, I'm waiting. Well, you got to keep working at it. Everything takes work, right? So also keep in mind that suicidal thoughts and actions, if you can, think about the people whose lives you're going to impact, the loved ones. Often we don't think about that because we're in our own state of being. It's almost like an irrational state where the mind is so powerful and certain things that can happen to it. It's unbelievable and incomprehensible sometimes. However, it's so complex that we're still trying to figure out the mind. And one thing you do know is that there will be people that will miss you. And sometimes when you're alive, you're like, it doesn't feel like, it doesn't seem like anyone cares, or this is why I'm in a state. It doesn't seem like anybody cares. I think one of the important things is that you got to know is that you matter, right? You matter. And maybe you're around people that aren't showing you that. Maybe you got to go to some environments where, hey, you know what? Get out, make the change. Go to places where there's an appreciation. Maybe the focus in your family life is not. We got lost along the way with all these material things and understanding of what matters, and what really matters is trying to find a place of happiness, content. However, that's strongly distorted in society today. It's understandable why a lot of people are on the edge because our priorities are all wrong, right? And we know it's true because look at the world the way it is. There's wonderful things going on, but I strongly believe we could feed everybody. And we shouldn't have people sitting at borders. We shouldn't have people hungry. We shouldn't be treating people wrong. We should treat them better. And that's why I say when there's a lot of people going through their sick, there's so many elements to it. However, um, there are many things that you can do in your life if you think about it. You could still accomplish. You can make some change if you've made some mistakes, and you can work on them if you're alive to change it. You might not be able to convert all your errors, but you can move forward at some point. There are sounds and sights and life experiences, that could lift you up if you make some change, if you just keep on holding on and believing and putting yourself in other shoes sometimes. See, this is the thing, too. I really believe that just looking at one aspect of suicide is when we start get down on ourselves, we start to feel a lot of internal chaos. And I start to think one thing that would help is if we start looking at other less fortunate people that, you know, they have it 10 times worse. It might give us some different perspective. You have to figure out in this life what works for you, but you also have to acknowledge and look around. And if you look hard enough, you will see reasons for living, right? Reasons for wanting to be around. And sometimes that takes some drastic change, but this is just an area that needs work. And one thing you have to try to do is ask yourself, why do I feel suicidal? And there are many reasons people could feel that way. So, what kind of emotional pain is leading you on this path or has you in this state? What are the reasons that exist for this pain that you're dealing with? And why are you unable to really cope? And why is this pain different for this person than it is for this person? Well, first of all, we have to understand as much as we're told we're all the same, um, we're not. We're different. And we have different experiences. And some of the causes are definitely different. And some of the way we cope is different. So when we're experiencing suicidal thoughts and feelings, it could be different things to different people, right? So and there are obviously people coming to the conclusion that this is my only option. They're definitely unable to think of solutions other than suicide, right? And there are other solutions out there. However, they're not seeing it. It's not presenting itself. It's just not considered one of the options, right? Or you're just simply not able to see it at all. But this intense emotional pain that you may be experiencing right now, it's going to alter your thinking. And that's going to make it even harder for you to solve problems or to connect with someone who could offer support or who could be there for you, like counselors, psychologists, therapists, friends, loved ones who can help you see some of these solutions, right? Um, this is this feeling of suicide. In most cases, it is temporary, right? It's almost always temporary. These thoughts, anyways, this pain, this unhappiness, you think it might seem or appear like it will never end, but it is very important to realize that, a crisis is usually temporary in the sense that we understand that, there are solutions that can be found and feelings will change and there will be some positives if you're holding on, right? There will be positive events that will occur. Suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And remember that. So that's what's scary about it. So it's really about giving yourself some time to work through it, right? For whatever reason, just understanding that the pain in most cases can subside. Not all cases, but most. So even when these situations or problems may seem hopeless, right, there are some solutions, right? And be mindful that mental health conditions are real. Schizophrenia, bipolar, depression, most of the things that I just mentioned are treatable, right? In some sort of way, whether it's your therapy, your medication, your lifestyle, right? People can find some help to improve their situation and recover, right? So that is something that we need to understand, right? So before you receive your treatment to solve your problems, you have to try, um, and you're going to be trying different approaches before you find the right solution. It's not the same for everyone. As I mentioned earlier, we're different. And there's going to be different strategies that and methodologies that need to be applied for your unique situation, right? It might take a combination of solutions, right? I know people say medication, that's one, but that's just one of many, right? Finding, even if you are taking medication, remember, if it's a doctor, which it has to be a doctor who prescribed medication, like even then, the medication, they have to figure out which is good for you, how much dosage, if that's the route that they recommend and you choose to go through. It's just something that has to be done. It can be very complex. However, getting help and figuring it out takes some work, as with everything, right? So keep that in mind. Medication is something of an option for some, but not for all, right? So what can you do? What can you do immediately if you're having these thoughts and feelings of suicide? And a lot of people talk a lot, but what's really practical? And I say practically, if you got to think of your state, right? Even though you're in some pain at this moment, right? You have to give yourself some distance, some space between your thoughts and your actions, right? Like tell yourself, right? Make a commitment to yourself. I'm going to wait at least 24 hours to 48 hours before I do anything drag. And even longer. Give yourself a week or a month. Say, hey, you know what? A week or a month. This is what you do now. Give yourself that time. So, you know what? Before I even think, no, nobody wants you to do anything, period. But some people are in such pain, they need something, right? And give yourself some time even to try, right? Because thoughts and actions, right? Especially when it comes to suicidal thoughts, those are two different things. You don't have to, they don't have to become a reality. It doesn't have to be where you're on a deadline, and if there's no deadline, no one's pushing you, right? So you set it up for yourself in the sense that you're trying to give yourself more time to think and process and understand that it is a temporary thought that can be worked through. That's what's important. Not go do it. You're not giving your time to go, okay, I'm going to do it at this, but you're actually saying, before I make any decisions and actions, and right, and bring those two together, I'm going to give myself some time. And it could be time to go, look, you know what, I'm going to go get some help, some support. I'm going to give myself this time. I'm going to talk to certain people, start thinking of it in that sense, right? Time to try to work through it. The more the better, because like I said, in most cases it's a temporary time period. When you're going through that serious pain, it's experiences that we go through can be very painful, and we have to give it some time and thought and some action to work it out. So giving yourself a little bit of time to, right, to make some consideration and some changes is good. Also, keep away from the drugs. And the alcohol, remember, we're altering our minds using this stuff. Seems like it's become a part of our natural landscape out there. Um, Especially in North America, the use of drugs, whether it's on the shelf, over the counter, or in a bar, or what have you, in the street. Um, a lot of people refer to it, but I think when you're going through suicidal thoughts, they can become enhanced if you're taking drugs or alcohol. So it's important not to use any of these drugs when you, especially when you're feeling down or hopeless or you're thinking about suicide. Keep away from that stuff. That does not help you relax at all. It doesn't help you in any sort of way. You also have to create a safe environment for yourself. And this is what we're talking about. Like, we're talking about this now. Just imagine I'm talking to somebody who's actually considerate. That's the way I'm talking. And a lot of people, as much as you want to rationalize it, no, I'm talking about how you can work through this now. So I'm saying, third thing I strongly recommend is creating that safe environment. When you're in your home, wherever you're at, your condo, your house, wherever, you want to remove things that are going to hurt you or that can harm yourself, like razors, pills, firearms, anything that could hurt you. Yeah, anything that's going to make you feel unsafe, especially if you are thinking of overdosing or giving yourself medicines. You know what I mean? No, you want to remove that. Alcohol from the house, drugs, like, no, get rid of it. Keep those things that could harm you or in your lowest low that you could, even in the worst case scenario, rid yourself of those things in your environment, period. Right? And that prevention is really great, like when you take these steps, because it's so weird when you think about people who even drink, and then one partner is not a drinker and the other one's a drinker, but the one who's a drinker has a problem, but they keep bringing alcohol in the house, and then they wonder why they keep referring to it. Like, I think people say, oh, you got to have a stronger mind. No, I think you have to rid it out of the environment, just for, like, people don't do that. They think, I don't know, for some reason there are a lot of people convinced that, oh, I got self-control. But influencers are big. So especially if you're feeling this deep pain on suicide, get rid of these things that could harm you, right? And one thing you don't want to do and is keep these feelings to yourself. The first step to coping with suicidal thoughts is to tell someone. And that's not easy to do, but you got to tell people who you trust. Yet it be a family. Some are going to get scared. Some aren't going to know what to do. And that's what we know before we disclose, right? If you're a person feeling these feelings, you're going to feel this, because that's what we do a lot of times. A lot of times, our insecurities, right? We project onto other people, and it prevents us from taking action. Oh, I don't want to put this on this person. I think they're not going to be able to handle it. So we go through all these reasons for not taking action, or from, stopping us from doing what we need to do, because we're worried about what this other person might think or feel. So, I mean, talk to anyone. I mean, I'm serious. Talk to a teacher, doctor, coach, counselor, friend, family member. Find someone who you can trust and confide in. And sometimes just tell somebody that, you can't let that fear, the embarrassment, and the shame stop you from getting some help. Reach out. It's not easy, no, but do that. It's important. You know what I mean? Uh, and remember, rarely does anything go off without a hitch the first time. Like, usually, when you're trying to talk about something, the first person might not be the one. No, so give up. Don't give up so easily. Give it a chance. Don't think too much about it. Just know that it might not work the first time. Keep working at it. Keep talking to people, saying, hey, it's what's going on. I'm sorry, but this is what it is. right? We carry a lot. We take in a lot as human beings. We take in so much, and a lot of it doesn't get filtered out. And there are so many reasons why. We can name a host of them, but we do need to know there's societal pressures out there that stop all people, not just young people, middle, old. A lot of pressure out there stops us from making moves. So don't keep it to yourself. Get it out. You know, take this perspective that there is hope and that you can get through this. As badly as you may be feeling at that moment, there is a good chance you're going to live through these feelings. No matter how much you're going through the hurt and the pain, the isolation, the selfish feeling of you're not enough, the self loathing, you just give yourself some time and don't do this by yourself. Get some support. Find it. And then if you say to yourself, well, I've been trying to have it, you keep trying. And if you're listening to my podcast, I want you to keep trying. I want you to try, keep trying. Break the norms. Look at it. Not everybody's right who's around you that knows you. If you make mistakes, it's okay. You have to work through it. You got to find a way to get yourself some support and understand that people care, right? People do care. You don't have to be in your family to care. People do care, but they're a lot of times you got to make some moves so people know what's going on. Because the one thing we don't have is mind readers, right? I don't know what's going on in your mind, and that's the truth. I don't. You don't know what's going on in my mind. I don't know what's going on in your mind. That's the one thing with all the technology we have not figured out. So try to reach out for some help for sure. You know, find groups if you have to. You know, you got to do it now. If you promise yourself, though, oh, you know what, I'm going to be around for at least a week and figure this out, get some, do everything that you can. Tell everyone that you can, right? Let it go. Drop it. Just say, you know what, I got to drop all these barriers. And, you know, I might have been the person that cried wolf, but this is real for me. Because I really believe that people are screaming out. But a lot of us, you know, especially when that story that came out, the boy that cried wolf, if anybody's ever read that story, they understand the person's crying, and what happens if people don't believe. It was such a fantastic story. But we still live it today where, you know, when we're hearing people complain all the time, we don't know what to take them seriously. We dismiss them. But I think you can't. You got to take it in as a serious issue and work through it with somebody. You know, because if, first of all, if they're doing that, right? I learned that if they're doing that, that means they're crying out for some help. Even if they're, oh, no, I'm fine. It's okay, right? We give that a lot. It doesn't matter who it is, as long as it's someone you trust and who could listen and who could show you some sort of support and acceptance. You know, that's what you should be doing. That is what you have to do now, right? So then you get into, well, how do I discuss this? How do I talk about it? Like, say I actually get the nerve to get up to talk to someone to admit there's something going on with me, having these soft thoughts, right? And you're trying to explain it. How do you do it? Well, you got to be upfront. You got to be genuine. You got to tell them what you're saying to with yourself. You know, I'm having these thoughts. This is what I'm thinking. Tell them straight up what's going on. What thoughts are you having, right? And if you have a plan, you're going to have to explain it to them. This is what I'm thinking. This is why I'm coming up with this in my mind. This is how I'm feeling, right? And don't be afraid to say, but you have to. I can't take it anymore. I'm done, right? Things are just too out of control for me, right? You know, just tell them, you know what? I'm thinking about suicide. I'm something's up with me. I'm just not feeling right. It's just a feeling that I got. It seems to consume me, right? You know, and if you can't talk about it, write about it. Write it down. Give a note to someone. Email it. right? Someone you trust, right? Get it in their hands, write it. Someone, because some people are going hard. See, sometimes people, because there's power structures out there, right? And you might have somebody in your life that's going off on you, that's really got it. They're a powerful presence and they're overshadowing you, and you don't feel you can come out to communicate. It's not easy to do, right? So talking about it is hard, but sometimes they get caught up. But if they knew that you might be going through this, some of that might break down and they might not be as harsh. They might start learning to listen and work with you, because I'm going to sell. Nobody wants that to happen. Nobody wants anybody to commit suicide. No one, right? No, I don't even, I got to say no one. I don't even understand why social media, they come in, all these people are glowing. No, that's not the way it is. That's not the way it is, and it's not the way it should be. Nobody wants anybody to harm themselves, and we have to understand that. So we have to try to get some help, right? So in any way that you can communicate it, do it, right? Do it. Try to express yourself, and just note that when you are trying to express yourself, not everybody's going to be taking it in easy, right? Some are going to get nervous. Some are going to get very anxious. Some are going to probably respond negatively because they're scared. See, a lot of us don't talk about that fear. We just react, we respond. The only way a lot of us know how to. But, that's the shutdown right there, is when somebody's not responding the way that we might want them to. So we take it badly. And we feel we're still in crisis and it's just, there's no hope, right? But you can't let that experience stop you from finding anyone who's going to help, who you can trust and care about, right? Like anyone that cares about you and you have a little bit of caring about them, give them that. Reach out to them and be as real, because we're living in a world today where reality, come on, it's a cover up, right? There's a lot of people not dealing with reality. We're fantasy, right? Look at TV, look at movies. A lot of it is animation and, like, come on. You wonder why we're not getting where we need to get as far as equity and balanced thoughts and balanced relationships. We've got a lot of fillers out there, fake fillers that are not good for the human mind. And we try to get past it. Sometimes we spend a lot of time going through all these emotions, ups and downs, just learning how to say things that we need to say, right? Because we're not used to doing it, or we don't know how to do it because there's so many other things that are going on that we're worried about. So if you're not understood by the person you disclose to, don't get upset. Learn to say, I'm going to keep working at it. Now, you can be hurt by it for sure, but it could be a bad experience, and you might think it's going to stop you. Don't let it stop you. Keep working on it, and get on um, online if you have to. Get some information, whatever, right? Like if you're in the U.S., you got to call some people like the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK, which is 8255, or I'm Alive, 1-800-784-2433. If you're in the UK or Ireland, I know some of my listeners are in the UK and Ireland, you call Samaritans UK at 116-123. If you're in Australia, you call Lifeline Australia at 131114. And in other countries, visit the IASP or suicide.org to find a helpline in your country. That is what I'm strongly recommend. Any country that you're in, go to suicide.org and get some help. Call if you have to. So these thoughts are going in your head. It's a lot of pain. You're feeling this way. So how do you cope with these thoughts? Well, you might think they're not going to end, and you might think that this is it. This is a permanent condition. and that you might not feel that you're going to overcome or get better. But in the meantime, right, think of these ways that you can cope with your suicidal thoughts and feelings. There are things that you can do, right? Talking with people every day, face to face, you know, even though you might be withdrawn, you got to talk to your trusted friends and spend some time with them and allow them to spend some time with you. And you got to call the help crisis line. And I don't mean once, you got to call. If you get a busy signal, which especially during this pandemic, all kinds of lines are busy. There's so many people who are busy. So it's going to take a little bit of patience, but still call. Call every day. Try to talk out your feelings. Try to just express yourself. Make a safety plan. Get yourself a set of steps that you can follow during this crisis. You know what I mean? Like, make sure you make that list. Get the doctor's numbers, the therapist, get somebody who can help you. But get some contact numbers, people you can refer to or call. Some friends, family members, right? That you can refer to in case of an emergency. You got to develop a safety plan, right? And make a written schedule for yourself and stick to it. No matter what, just stick to the schedule. Keep a routine as much as possible, right? Especially when you're feeling like you're not in control, right? Do that and stay out of these dark corners. Try to get out into some light, at least for a period of the day where there's some brightness, something. That sun does miracles, but you got to get out there. Get into that light. Get a light box, some light therapy going on. Exercise. Seriously, go at it. Go at it. Work it out vigorously. You know, keep safe, but do it. Get the benefit out of it. Walk. Run. Go even if you have to go for a short periods of time for 10 minutes. Get that burst of activity going. Let it positively impact your mood. Do it. Get active. Remember that, hey, I got some personal goals that I've always wanted to do, like travel. But then you know what? A lot of times I got to pay this, I got to do this. So we put so many barriers in front of ourselves. And what ends up happening is we don't end up doing anything that we want to do because, we got bills to pay. No, cut it out. So you know what? No. Let me go here. Let me get out of this environment. Let me make some moves. Um, Serious. Let me change it up because I'm going to take some time to do what I want to do for once. I'm tired of talking about it. Other people convincing me that I can't do it. Make the change happen now. If you're in a society where all you can see is people are they don't care about people. They're worried about material things. All they're doing is pushing pressure and money on you. All they're talking about is beauty. All they're talking about who's the next best thing. Get out of this society. Go to a place, go to a country where it's more laid back, a Caribbean, a places where people can, you know what I mean, where they actually just care about people. They're not caught up in all the political strife and stress of this life or their focus on money. It's just so beautiful when you can see other people just appreciate the little things. I think the more we give people, the worse they become in this life. The more confused they become about true values, human values, right? So try to remember some of the goals, some of the things that you like about yourself, even some things that you wanted to do. Try and do them, right? But there are also things you have to look out for, right? Like being on your own too much, right? Solitude. This can make these thoughts even worse. So that's why I said don't spend too much time on your own, wallowing in your own thoughts. Right? Pick up a phone, go somewhere, get part of it. No, seriously, food bank, whatever. Get involved, help out, try to do certain things, right? Like, you could be in that situation where you're down at the food bank, where you're living off the street, where you're having hard times and you don't have family or you've lost everything. And all I'm saying to you is try to find some change, some different. thing going on in this world that you can, relate to. But try not to be alone in your thoughts. Try to understand that you need to somehow get out and get active and get involved. You know, um, we've already talked about the substance abuse of alcohol and drugs. Um, just please be clear that these things do not help. They actually worsen the situation, and don't do things that make you feel worse, like listening to sad music. Oh, I'm feeling so sad. So you start listening to really sad music and you get deeper. Or looking at photos of, let's say you had a loved one and the loved one's not around, and you just, that's all you got, and you're just focusing on that, or reading old letters that you might have had, or visiting the loved one's grave, or all you can think about is someone you've lost. And whoa, you got to try to change that up. You really do. And you want to avoid that if you can. And try to avoid being over occupied, or shall I say preoccupied, with these suicidal thoughts, because it can make them stronger. You know, don't try to focus on a negative. Find something that's going to distract you, keep you busy, right? People do. Like, a lot of people won't sit back. They'll go to work. They'll do activities that they just don't have the mind for it. So they just like, listen, I got to keep my mind active, busy. I don't even want to think about that. If you had a relationship and you're feeling the no, just say, look, okay, for myself, I'm just going to do something different, something that's going to stop me from thinking about that person, or me and what I don't have, or what I'm missing, or why life isn't worth. No, change it up, right? Change it up some way you can. Make some effort to do that. And even when those thoughts do go away from time to time, there's still strong advice that I give you. Just because those feelings subside, that doesn't mean you don't get help for yourself. You still have to get help. I did mention that, yes, it could be a temporary situation, but it could come and it could go. So try to get some help. So when it does subside and you got certain things going on, don't ignore it. Don't put it back like, oh, it didn't happen. Oh, I was in that state. Then now, no. Get some help for that emotional pain. If it's a traumatizing experience, find some support. Say, hey, I was going through something. I want to try to understand what's going on. And in case I start to feel that way again, I want to be, working through it, because chances are you will feel that way again at some point. It could be years down, it could be weeks, could be months, could be any time. But looking at yourself and trying to figure out and work through things, it's so important. But don't try the one off. It rarely works, right? Make sure you can come in and out of this thing. And the best thing you could do is realize, look, I'm acknowledging that I was there. And don't just do that. No, we have problems, things go on, but acknowledging them and working through them and getting support and continuous support for them is great, right? So, um, how are you going to get through it, and what is going to help you recover? Well, I think, like many things, identifying, assessing, and analyzing, things that might trigger you, right? Identify certain things, especially what triggers you or situations you may be in that leads you to these feelings of desperation or these suicidal thoughts. Like, and there are things that could make you feel bluer than blue at certain times of your life, like anniversaries, you know, of a loss, or if you're in, alcohol and stress from your partner, and that relationship is not healthy. It could be an unhealthy relationship, right? So you got to be able to identify certain things. And sometimes you might have to, believe it or not, you might have to avoid these people in your life that are causing you strife, or these memories. You got to try to work through them, not really focus so hard on them where it brings you down to a situation where you just don't feel your sense of worth. So just identifying these triggers and these situations that can bring on these feelings, is a part and a big step to recovery. right? You got to take care of yourself. You also got to make sure you're taking your health seriously, right? Don't let that deteriorate. Don't binge. Don't do anything excessive. Make sure you're getting plenty of rest and exercise, right? It releases the endorphins, it relieves some stress, and promotes some emotional well being. Like that's taking care of yourself. Take care of yourself. And hey, sometimes let other people take care of you, because there are a lot of people that build up these strong emotions is because they're so used to depending on themselves, and they never let other people try to help them or take care. They never let their guard down because of past experiences, somebody who wasn't there for them, or they just never could depend on people. And then when it did come to a point where they had to depend on somebody, they weren't there. So what did they do? They took it into their psyche that, you know what, nobody's there for me, I got to do it all myself. And that's what they do. But you got to take care of yourself. But sometimes you got to let other people take care of you if you need it at that time. Let them support you, right? And build that network if you can. You know, bring people around who are positive influences. Look at the people that you do relate to on a regular. It's sad, but it's true, right? Look at those people who influence you. um, are they saying things? They might look one way and talk a way, but look at, what's coming out of their mouth in relation to you and how they view you and what they're saying about you. Like, that's something you have to look at as well. So when you build your network, make sure it's a positive network, a little community. It's not easy, but go around people. There's programs, there's things you can get involved in, but build a network of positive thinkers, not just funny people. I'm not talking about funny people who like to joke around and use sarcasm and, people who are genuine. If they have a sense of humor, it's beautiful, but not just funny in the sense that they're seeking attention. That's not going to help you. Make sure you're as genuine as you can when it comes to that. And I always say develop. If you're going to recover, develop something new for yourself, some activities, some interests. Give yourself a sense of meaning, purpose, right? When you're doing things that, you find fulfillment in, you become a better person. You know and learn about yourself, right? And some of these feelings of despair, they're less likely to return when you're feeling good about yourself, right? And when it comes to stress, I think one thing people have to do is when suicide's there and it's deep and it's painful and it's real. But there is a correlation to stress, how much we're taking on, the levels of stress. And we have to find ways to keep it together and deal with the stress levels. We have to keep a balance. We got to keep it in check. Learn ways to deal with our stress, healthy ways, like the meditation, the exercising, sensory strategies to relax. We got to learn to practice simple breathing exercises and challenge these negative self defeating thoughts. That's how we deal with stress, because stress, an abundance of stress, will deteriorate your mind quickly. So remember that. Just keep working on that. Understand we're going to experience it, right? So that is what I'm strongly recommending, is that we understand that suicide is real, and there's a lot of reason for people to be concerned is because most people don't talk about it. And when they do talk about it, the few that really discuss it with people, it gets others uneasy, and they could be dismissive, or it could be perceived as your problem, not mine, or they don't have time, or they're busy, or they're not paying it. There's a host of reasons why suicide is not looked up that seriously as something that can be managed. It's usually a reaction after some attempt happens or actually followed through by people. However, we have to be able to talk. We have to be able to communicate and support and look for the signs and symptoms and educate ourselves. And I think if we educate ourselves on us, and that means us learning about ourselves, learning about things that impact us that are real, like the stressors, right? Societal pressure, our wants versus our needs. Now, of course, we're talking about being in a state of suicide right now and what we should do now. But let's talk a little bit about suicide prevention because we know that it's important to recognize the warning signs and we have to take them seriously. So if you think you know of a friend, family member, or colleague who's considering suicide, there are things you could help with. There are things you could actually do to prevent suicide. I know a lot of times we feel that there's a limited amount of assistance we could do to help people, but really we can do certain things if we have some understanding, right? We have to have a basic understanding of suicide, right? Um, I mean, the truth is, there's like, according to the WHO, there's approximately 1 million people who commit suicide each year. And we do have to ask ourselves, what are the reasons many of them choose to take their own lives, right? You know, it's difficult to comprehend what drives so many individuals to take their own lives, especially if you're not in their situation. But we do have to understand that these people are in so much pain that they feel there's no other way out for them. There's no options, right? This is serious. This is a desperate attempt to escape suffering. Something that they feel is for them has become unbearable, right? It's hopelessness, isolation. They can't see any relief, you know, except for what? Through taking their own lives, through death, right? That death. And keep in mind that it's not something that they're looking to do. A lot of them are in conflict with that decision. They're not really convinced it's something that they want to do by ending their own lives, but they might feel there's no other way out. So they're very conflicted about ending their lives. And I'm sure they wish there was an alternative to suicide, but they're in a state where they just can't see it. And for you to get a basic understanding of what people who may be thinking when it comes to suicide, you have to understand we have to be able to decipher between the myth and the facts. And the myths are people who talk about suicide really won't do it. Well, that is so far from the truth. If anything, that's an indicator, right? Almost everyone who makes that attempt of suicide has given some sort of clue or warning signs. So don't even ignore, as I said, any indirect references to death or suicide. Like somebody says, well, you know what? I'll be sorry when I'm not here anymore. And you're just like, oh, you're just feeling sorry for yourself. I don't want to really hear that. Or, you know what I mean? Or there's just no other way for me. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to be able to handle it. This is it. Right? So no matter how casual they are in that conversation or jokingly they might say something, right? You know, these could be indications of serious suicidal feelings that are coming out. So take them seriously. But there are also people who say anyone who tries to kill themselves, they got to be crazy. There's something wrong with them. So we dismiss it. We use that word mental health. Well, there's something wrong with them. They're crazy. Well, truthfully, most suicidal people are not psychotic. They don't really have major mental health, um, or cognitive disorders, like, they're not psychotic or insane. They're just upset. They're just grief stricken. They're depressed. They're, you know, they are dealing with extreme distress and despair, and this emotional pain. You know, it's not a mental illness necessarily, right? It's just something that is there, and it's something that they're trying to cope with, and they're in a state of desperation. So, labeling them is the worst thing that you can do, because it's basically dismissing them. And we do that. Oh, you're crazy. There's something wrong with you. We do that all the time. We got to get away from that. Like, we got to learn to acknowledge and care and appreciate people. But there's people who also say if someone's determined to kill themselves, there's nothing you can do to stop them. Um, as I mentioned earlier, people who are in that state, they usually have mixed feelings about death. And a lot of them want to live, you know, and wanting to die is not something that they want to do, right? It's just they're feeling, they're in that state where they just don't feel, a lot of times it's like I said, it's almost like a internal battle that they got going on with themselves. There's conflict, right? It's almost like two souls pulling each other apart, right? They just want the pain to stop. It's not that they want the death. They just don't want to keep suffering anymore. This mental, you know, tormenting that they got going on to end their life is not what they prefer. It's just they're being tormented mentally. And that is what you have to understand. So these myths that are out there, that's very common, and they're excuses, right? These are the things we tell ourselves so we don't have to look at it. Right? But there's also people that um, they shame people, right? And they blame. They shame them and they blame them. And we're good at that as people, aren't we? We're good at judging, right? They say, oh, these people who kill themselves, who commit suicide, they just didn't want the help. You know, really? Nah. The truth is, before these people actually follow through, a lot of them seek help. They've made several attempts, and at least half, they sought some sort of help, you know, in that 6 months prior to actually following through. They did seek some help. That's why I say it takes work. It takes continuous work and commitment. It takes love. It takes support. It takes everything. It takes a feeling of compassion, care, love, and support. And it takes courage. So that's what it takes to work through it. And a lot of us are scared. A lot of us buy into this myth of talking about suicide, giving someone ideas, right? The more we talk about, oh, don't talk about it, you're going to give people to. It's scary, but it's not true, right? You're not giving suicidal ideas by talking about it. Actually, the truth is, if you do talk about it, you're allowing some dialogue. You're opening the person up to talking, and it's talking honestly about suicidal thoughts and feelings. That's what a lot of people need. They need to be able to talk, right? They need to be able to express themselves, and they need this caring, listening, compassionate ear. So, we know the signs are out there, and we've talked about the signs, but sometimes people need this in their lives when this bearable pain, you know. And what are these warning signs? The obvious ones: talking about suicide, right? Talking about dying, talking about hurting themselves. I wish I wasn't born, or seeking out lethal means, right? Trying to get access to guns or pills or, any objects that can harm themselves, or whatever, or speeding or racing, being reckless, right? Just seeking out things that are, lethal, and being preoccupied with death. That's a sign too. The unusual focus on death and dying and violence. Right? And like, watch for it too, right? Because people do it. They use narratives to do it. And we don't see, oh man, that's a scary story. Well, that person could be talking about themselves, so keep your eyes on your fries, right? People say, now. Well, no, I know there's scary stories out there, but watch it, right? If you have some stories, there are people, and you just clarify, hey, are you okay? Whatever, talk, find out what's going on. But, however, just understand when people are preoccupied with death and everything that they do, these could be signs. Especially if you have a friend who's one of those ones that's always being negative about the future, right? There's no hope for any future. Everything seems bleak, and we all have those people that talk this, that, and you're just like, they're so, Every time I go around them, they're always negative about things. But those are common. But I mean, watch out for people who have those feelings of helplessness and hopelessness, and they're acting like they're trapped and they have no alternatives, and life is just so bad. Right? When you listen to those, be careful. Right? Be very, very careful. Right? Too much of that negative talk starts to bring you down. Watch it. Right? You can walk away from it, but it is a sign something's going on. Right? And those feelings of self hatred, as we said, feelings of worthlessness and guilt, you know? Or watch for those people who are trying to put things together, their affairs in order, making out a will, or giving away their prized possessions, or making arrangements for family members. Like that right there is an indication of suicide, right? Where you're seeing them out of nowhere, where you might never seen this person before, and all of a sudden they're showing up on a regular, and you can see that they're doing things, getting around, and seeing people that, like, watch it. That could be an indication. Or people who say goodbye, or you'll never see me again, or you get those calls, and hey, I was talking to you, I haven't talked to you in years, and they're acting like they saying goodbye for the last time, and you get that feeling like, hey, like that was a weird conversation. What's going on there, right? Like checking in. Hey, man, you okay? Right? Like, what's going on? Like, not being able to dismiss it. No, it's actually it's sticking with you. So you're just like, hey, man, this person's giving an indication something's going on, or if they're withdrawing from others, right? From friends or family. Or I told you about that self-destructive stuff, right? The increase in drug and abuse, or opioid addiction, right? A lot of those drugs, where they're getting so heavy, it's a sign that their will to live is diminishing, right? Or watch for the sudden sense of calm, right, and happiness after being extremely depressed. That could mean that that person has made a decision to attempt suicide. They've made it up, that they're not in conflict anymore. They just, watch it. And, they were extremely depressed, and all of a sudden they're calm, they're happy, and it's like, hey, man, you're going through a lot now. I'm not really sure what's going on with you. You're not, uh-oh. So be weary of that, but just be aware. These are some signs, right? So make sure you speak up if you're worried. Just talk about it, right? Start those conversations, right? As I said, ask those questions, right? You know, and if you have somebody who is coming to you for support, right? Right? And they have things on their mind, and they start telling you, for example, oh, I've been feeling upset, right? And then you say to them, hey, I've been concerned about you actually lately, I've noticed that there's some little differences in you, and I was wondering, is there something going on? I'm just checking in just to make sure everything's okay, right? And it's good. See, that's a good feeling when people show that they care, right? That's how you start conversations about suicide with people, right? I'm just checking in, man. Hey, oh no, no, I'm good. And hey, it might not be good, but you just check it in your care. This is how you support, because that's what we're talking about. How can you support, right? And there's questions you should be asking in that case, right? Like if they come and they disclose, you can ask like, when did you begin to feel like this, or did something happen and make you start feeling this way, or tell me what I can do. How can I support you at this moment? You know, and are you getting any help? Have you thought about getting any help? Is this something that you would consider, right? And there are things you could say that can make the situation better. Just say, hey, you know what? I'm here for you. I'm going to support you. Whatever you need to do, I'm going to be there for you. And I care about you, and I don't want anything bad to happen. And you might not understand this. You might not even believe it. But you're going to do okay. We're going to work through it, you know? This feeling is going to subside, and, you know, you're going to get support, but it's feeling like this now. But you know what? We're going to communicate regularly, and I'm going to support you how I can. But remember, this is not a permanent feeling, you know? And hey, I might not be able to understand how you're feeling, right? But I do care, and I want to help. And when you're feeling at your weakest moments, when you feel that you can't go on, you got to, you know, hold off for a day or an hour, sometimes, whatever you can do. I care about you, right? So make sure when you're talking to a suicidal person, you are genuine, right? You want to let that person know you do care and that they have support in you, right? And you don't you got to know that you're not going to have the perfect language. There's no special words, right? What's going to be important is you being able to show that you are concerned, not exactly every word that you say, and be a listener. Let them know that, you know what, let me know, talk to me, what's going on, and just listen. You know, no matter how negative the conversation is, give them their space, their time, right? Be as positive as you can. Don't judge. Be sympathetic and reassuring. Let them know that there's a life that matters, right? That they matter, and that life is important. Their life is important to you, right? And take them seriously. If they're, I'm so depressed, take them serious and ask them, hey, are you having these suicidal thoughts? You're allowing them to share what they're going through. You're allowing them to express their pain. And you're not putting ideas in their head. What? Because you heard that, right? You ever hear those people when you say that too? I don't know if you've ever had those conversations, but I have. I've spoken, sorry, to people. And you know what? As soon as you said, they go, what? What do you mean? Oh, you crazy? No, they dismiss it, but still doesn't stop me from inquiring and caring, right? But what you don't want to do is argue with the suicidal person. You know, you don't want to get into confrontations. You don't want to say things like, come on, you have too much to live for. Or, you know, your suicide will hurt your family. Or just snap out of it. Get over it. Once you get past it. Letting them realize they have loved ones is one thing, but that's not going to be their primary focus, right? Don't act shocked. You know, don't go, oh my God, right? Oh, and start arguing, you know what I mean? That suicide is wrong. And you know what? Don't use religion on them. Oh, you know what? Because there are certain religions where um, suicide is considered a sin, right? Using that on them is not going to make them feel any better or give them any hope. You don't even know what the basis of what they're going through is, but trying to argue that is useless. Don't do that. Don't act like you don't understand. You know, don't act shocked. Oh my God. Talk to them, right? And make sure that you allow them the dignity that you can promise confidentiality or be sworn to secrecy on what they're telling you. Because somebody's life is at stake, right? Their well being. right? Their personal safety. Don't make promises you can't keep. But if you promise to keep your discussion secret, you know, in a certain situation, yeah, you might have to break your word. They might not know it, but I'm not saying, oh, just keep it and keep it. No, if you make them a promise and you're trying to be genuine, great. But I do have to say, when it comes to that, if it's at that point, you might have to break the word because you're dealing with someone's life. So you make promises because you want to hear from them. You want them to, right? And I'm not saying go tell anybody, but tell people who can help if necessary. You want them to be able to talk. Because some people say, oh, I told you, you told everybody, and then there goes the trust. Well, when it comes to their lives, if I'm worried about them, I'm like, you know what? I've got no alternative. I've got to do something. I've got to work to help you somehow. And sometimes telling people that can help helps. Sometimes it don't. But you're trying, and that's what matters, is that you are trying. You're not trying to fix the person. You're not trying to fix their problems. You're trying to help them, assist them, give advice, make them feel that they have some valid feelings, and you acknowledge them. you know it's not about how extreme the problem is, but it's how bad it's impacting them, right? That's what's to be focused on, right? And don't blame yourself. You can't, as much as we think we can help, we can assist wherever we can. But it's hard for us to really fix things like depression and the stressors that they can go through. We can help them work through certain things. Um, but trying to make their happiness is a real challenge. As long as we understand that we're not able to really fix them, it's not our job. What we're trying to do, we're trying to assist. We're not trying to fix anyone, and it's not our responsibility to fix anyone. We can help work with them to get support and support them, but you know we can't take it on too heavy. Don't blame yourself. Just know that you could be a better helper if you can understand when a crisis may be occurring. And if you're in a position to quickly respond to that crisis, like you might say to yourself, how can I assess if this person's at risk? Well, first, you got to ask them, um, do you intend to take your own life? Do you know when you're going to do it? Do you have a means to carry this thing out? And do you have a plan? Like, these are questions that you can ask. Is there an intention? Is there a time set, right? Do they have a means, and do they have a plan, right? So just understand there's levels to this suicide, the risk of suicide. There's levels to it, right? There's a low level, right? Which you have some thoughts, no suicide plan, but they say they won't attempt suicide. That's the low level. But the moderate to medium level is, they have somewhat of a plan. It's not very lethal, but they say they won't attempt suicide, right? It's just some thoughts that they're having. And then the high suicide, uh, they do have a plan. They've thought about it. It stays on their mind, but they won't. They won't attempt suicide. They're like, nah, I'm not gonna do it. But then there is the severe, where they have those suicidal thoughts. They have a specific plan. It's highly lethal, and they do, and they're willing to attempt suicide. They're convinced it's something in their mind they can't get out of. So that's severe. Uh, these are the different levels, and if it does seem like it's going to happen, if it seems imminent, you're going to have to call a crisis center, even call 911 universal. Take that person to an emergency room. Remove things in their homes that could put that person in jeopardy, like the knives, you know, anything that could hurt them, medication, things like that. Um, any objects that are in the close vicinity that could be problematic. Don't leave them alone though if they're in that state. Severe. Don't leave them alone. Don't offer help and support, but don't leave them alone. And you can help people who are suicidal by getting professional help and understanding it is very serious. Do everything in your power to get them to get help. Call crisis line with them if you can. Follow up on treatment. You know, make sure your friend and loved one takes it as directed if they get medication from their doctor. Be aware of possible side effects. You might have to be the advocate for that person, you know, so that they're not taking too much or what have you. It's work, right? It's work, you know. Be proactive, you know. So, you might have to, make sure that that person calls you whenever they need to. Hey, call me whenever you need to. If you got something on your mind, I want to hear from you. Don't wait for them to call you. Call them, right? Hey, what's going on? How you doing? Right? Be that person. You know, encourage them. To change towards some positive lifestyle. Make a positive lifestyle change, right? Work with them. Help them get out of it. Help them work through it. Make sure that they're getting their rest, their sleep, or getting away from that relationship that's damaging them, that's bringing them to the state where they can't function, right? Help them make a move, whatever. Help them design a safety plan, right? That's what you can do. But just make sure you're aware of the risk factors, right? Because there are common risk factors, and mental illness is one of them. Drugs are another, right? Previous attempts, or if they had a history of attempting, like a history of suicide, or if they had a history of trauma or abuse, right? Or even terminal illness, or chronic pain, a recent loss or stressful life event, social isolation and loneliness, if that's what they've been dealing with, right? It could be heavy for that person, but these are risk factors, right? And suicide in teens and older adults, quite prevalent. The, those are the ones that are higher risk. The teens and the older adults, those are the higher risk category in our society. Because with teens, a lot of it's about child abuse, like the traumatic events they go through, lack of a support network, you know what I mean? Or availability of guns, things like that. Or hostile social or school environment, exposure to other teens who are doing suicide. It's scary, but it's sad, but it's true. But there are people that have colleagues or friends or peers that commit suicide, and you know it's true. They get into that state where wow, um, it impacts them. It just does. And what are the warning signs in teens? There are warning signs that we should be looking out for in our teens. Especially if you have a teen and you see their habits changing, like their eating habits or sleeping habits. Watch for that. Or if they're withdrawing from friends and family, irregular activities, if they're violent or rebellious behavior, bullying or running away, or if they have that abuse, or if they neglect their personal appearance too much, right? Persistent boredom, difficulty concentrate, or decline in the quality of their work, or they're complaining about physical symptoms, right? Or they reject praise or rewards, or both. These are things to look for in our teens. But in the elderly, it's a little bit different, you know. Especially getting older, they're going to have some loved ones. You got to watch out for that. If they had death of loved ones, right? Or if they're older and they don't have people visiting them or see them, they're going to feel isolated and alone. And they're going to have some pains. They're getting older, whether it's arthritis, any organ problems or medications that, or disability or abilities, right? Or if they've had some major life changes, lost their loved ones, or retirement, or loss of independence, right? These are things that are a risk for the elderly. Or strictly put, a sense of purpose, right? You're getting older, maybe you don't feel you have one, right? There are signs, there's warning signs, even in the older community, you know, especially if they start reading about the suicide, the death, or if they're also having problems with their sleep, or if they start neglecting medical advice. They're told to take their medications and they stop taking them. That's a sign. That's a warning sign. Failing to take your medication that you need, or stockpiling their medication and taking sudden interest in things that are detrimental to their health, right? Normally they're sociable, but next thing you know, they're isolating themselves and um, they're talking negatively at people, or they're engaging aggressively at people, and they start withdrawing and just going through these rapid mood changes. These are things to think about. There's lots of things that are going on with people, and it's hard to figure out, but I think when you educate yourself a little bit on things that you can look for, it makes it better when you're trying to help support someone. So if you have the feeling that someone is going through something, of course, it's better to inquire and be genuine and supportive and compassionate and caring. Simply put, caring. Letting them know that they matter. Well, we've talked about some serious subject here, suicide. And I would like to say we've covered some good material, and I do appreciate my listeners, and I want you to spread the word like the wise old bird. And we're going to continue to talk about relevant topics that matter. And if you know of someone who could be going through this, just take a listen a couple times, and get it in your mind that you can help. You could be the difference, right? Between life and death, right? It's just your attitude. You matter. They matter. You can do something. You can't fix everything, but you can put your best foot forward and realize that that's what it takes. People stepping up and showing how they care. That's what's important. It's not an easy topic to talk about, suicide, and a lot of people shy away from it. Understandably so, because a lot of them don't understand and they just haven't experienced that before, somebody even bringing that to their attention. However, there are things that we can do. And one of the most important things that we can do is acknowledge that these feelings are real and that you are going to take it seriously. So thank you and take care of yourself.